hear a telephone conversation between an employee of an airline company and a customer. You have 30 seconds to look at questions 1 to 6.
GB Airlines, this is Kyle speaking. How can I help?
Hi, my name is Matt Walsh. I'm calling on behalf of Mr. John Sparrow to claim expenses for a delay in his flight last week.
Good morning, Mr. Walsh. Thank you for calling. Could you please tell me the flight number and the date of departure?
The date of departure was the 24th of January, 2016. I'm afraid I don't have the flight number in front of me at the moment.
Okay, that's all right. One moment. Could you tell me where was Mr. Sparrow departing from?
He was departing from Athens.
Is that Athens, Greece or Athens, Georgia?
Athens, Greece.
Right. And what was the destination?
It was Heathrow, London.
Right. We've got 2 flights from Athens to London Heathrow on the 24th of January 2016. Was it the 3:25 p.m. flight or the 9:45 p.m.?
It was the later one, 9:45.
Okay, so the flight number is GB1011.
Right, okay.
Okay, yes. I can see that Mr. Sparrow's flight was cancelled and he was booked on the next flight on the 25th of January at 3:25 p.m. Is that correct?
Yes, that is correct.
According to our system, one of my colleagues spoke with Mr. Sparrow on the phone on the 24th to inform him of the cancellation and offered to book a hotel for him for the night, but Mr. Sparrow preferred to book one himself.
Yes, because he didn't want to stay near the airport, as the next flight was in the afternoon.
Yes, of course. Could you tell me which hotel he stayed at?
Yes, he stayed at the Hypnos Hotel.
Oh, could you spell that for me?
Of course. That's Hypnos.
Right. Thank you for that. And could you please tell me how much the total cost was for the night?
Sure. It was 73 euros.
Right. Do you have a copy of the receipt for that?
Yes, of course. Would you like me to send it to you?
Yes, please.
Can I email a picture of it to you?
Absolutely. The email address is refunds@gbairlines.co.uk.
Great, thank you.
No problem. Were there any other expenses you wish to claim?
Actually, yes. There was also the taxi ride to the airport and the taxi ride back the next day.
Right. And what was the total cost?
The first taxi ride was 53 euros and the second one was 42, so 63, 73, 83. Yeah, so the total was 95 euros. I'll send you the receipt for those as well.
Thank you. Are there any other expenses?
No, I think that's it.
You now have 30 seconds to look at questions 7 to 10.
Excellent. So if you could please send us the receipts for the hotel and the taxi rides, and after we receive them it should take about 48 hours for the funds to reach Mr. Sparrow's account.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
My pleasure. Is there anything else I can help you with?
Actually, yes. There's one more thing. Mr. Sparrow complained about the meal during the flight. He said that it was a bit bland.
Right.
So he asked me if it was possible to switch to a different meal option for his upcoming flight to Kiev next week.
Right, of course. Just give me a minute, please. Right, I see that Mr. Sparrow had the light meal option for his flight to London, and you would like to change that. What would you like to change it to?
What are the other options?
We've got 12 different meal options. Would you like me to list all of them for you?
Well, Mr. Sparrow has told me that he would prefer something without meat. How many of these do not contain meat?
We've got 3 meal options without meat. We've got the vegetarian option, the vegan option, and the Asian vegetarian.
What's the difference?
There's a variety of different dishes served with each option. For example, next week the vegetarian option will be a small spinach and feta cheese pie, a bread roll, a salad, and tropical fruit.
And the vegan option?
The vegan option doesn't include any dairy products, and it also doesn't include fowl, eggs, or honey. I'm afraid I don't have the specific menu for this week, but I can email it to you as soon as it becomes available.
Oh, could you do that? That would be great.
Yes, of course. I can email you a detailed description of all the meal options if you like.
Yes, please.
No problem. Please do not forget to call us back to change the meal option. You need to do that 48 hours before the departure time for international flights and 24 hours for domestic flights.
So 48 hours for this one then?
Yes, exactly.
Perfect.
Oh, no, I'm sorry. Transatlantic flights require 48 hours. All flights within Europe require 24 hours. So in this case, you will need to call us 24 hours in advance. I apologise for that.
Okay, great.
So, could I please have your email address so I can send you the menus?
Certainly. It's matt.walsh@sparrowlimited.com.
That is the end of part 1.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 2.
Part 2.
You will hear a job interview.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 15. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 15.
Please sit down, Mr. Wilson. My name's Jane Smith, and I'm the personnel manager.
Hello, how do you do?
Now, this is just a short preliminary interview. I'd like to talk about your present job and what you've done up till now.
Yes, of course.
Well, could you tell me how long you've had your present position in evening news? It is evening news, isn't it?
Yes, that's right. I'm not sure. Let's see. I left university in 2002. Is that right? Yes, 2002. Then I was unemployed for about 2 months. And then I travelled round Britain for a few weeks. So it must be more than 3 years now, in fact.
Yes. And have you any particular reason for wanting to change your job? I mean, why do you want to move?
Well, I actually like my present job and still find it interesting. The salary's okay, so it's nothing to do with money, though you can always do with more. I suppose the thing is that I'm really very ambitious and keen to get promoted, so that's the real reason.
You say you like your job. Can you tell me what aspect you like most?
Oh dear, that's difficult. There are so many things. My colleagues are quite nice to go along with, so there's a good cooperative atmosphere, and compared to other presses, the working conditions are great. I mean, the office itself is good.
Yes.
And then there's the fact that as a journalist, I regularly write articles about what is happening at home or in the world. So I have to make decisions. I must be responsible for what I have written. You know, that's what I really like most about the job. They give me lots of room for initiative.
Yes. Well,
We're looking for someone who isn't a clock watcher and who isn't too concerned about working fairly long hours.
Oh, I don't mind that. I'm used to it. I often work irregular hours. I was very often made to work at night.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 16 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 16 to 20.
Hi, John. Are you nearly ready?
Oh, no. I don't think I'm going to make it tonight.
Why?
I've got this assignment to finish for tomorrow.
Well, maybe I can help. What do you have to do?
I have to do a short presentation on some household object, and I just can't think of anything. I have to talk about what it is and the parts in it.
Well, why not make it simple? Why not describe a bottle or a can?
Well, that's far too simple.
OK, how about an aerosol can?
Maybe. What labels can you put on it?
First, you'd have to draw an aerosol can. First thing you could label would be the hairspray or whatever was in the can. You'd just label that product, I suppose. Then you'd have to label the area above the product as the propellant.
Is that the gas that presses down on the contents of the can, forcing it out through the dip tube?
Yes, you've got it.
OK. So far, so good. Now, at the top of the aerosol, there are quite a few things to label, so I'd have to write quite small.
Unless you drew a couple of lines and showed an enlarged picture of that area.
Yes, that would work. Then I could start labelling from the top to the bottom.
The first thing on the enlargement would be the nozzle.
The what?
The nozzle. You know, Nozzle. Then the seal.
Right. Then all I'd need is the spring.
No, you'd need to label the inlet first, then the final part would be the spring. Anyway, that's it. You've finished. We can go out now.
Well, I have to type all that into the computer first, and draw the can.
Oh!
That is the end of part 2.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 3.
Part 3.
You will hear a conversation between two students who will discuss a project they're working on together. You have 30 seconds to look at questions 21 to 27.
Hey Jess, glad you could make it. We've got a lot to discuss.
Hi, Matt. Yes, sorry I'm a bit late. I did bring all my notes with me.
Yes, me too. Where shall we start?
Well, I think it would be a good idea to clarify our objectives just one more time.
Yes, good idea. Okay, here we are. We need to record, photograph, and identify the plant species in 10 1-square-meter plots.
Does it say anything about where these plots should be and how they should be laid out?
Ah, here it is. It says that all the plots need to be no more than 10 meters apart.
And how do we choose them?
Ah, this is the fun part. I remember this. Here we are. Make a 1 meter square frame using bamboo sticks available from the department stores.
Yes, we've already done that.
I know, I'm just reading the whole section.
Okay.
One person stands roughly in the middle of the chosen area and throws the frame. The other person uses a tape to mark out the square where the frame landed and returns frame to thrower. The thrower then turns a few degrees on the spot and throws again. The thrower must turn slightly after each throw and vary the force of the throw until after the 10th throw they are pointing in almost the same direction as the first.
That sounds a bit complicated.
That's only because it's all in writing. It's just a simple throw, turn, throw, turn, throw, turn until we have 10 squares.
And I guess you want to do the throwing.
Well, if you don't mind. I'm sure you'll be more accurate at marking the squares.
Yes, I am sure I am, and I'm sure you've got a stronger throwing arm.
You now have 30 seconds to look at questions 28 to 30.
Okay, good. We've got that sorted. Now we need to decide where to go.
Yes, I've been thinking about that and I've brought the map.
Ah, well done. I forgot mine.
Now, I've identified 3 possible locations, but they've all got some disadvantages.
Okay, fire away.
Well, the area around this lowland marsh could be interesting. There'll be a lot of interesting water plants here.
Looks good, but what's the problem?
Mainly that it's already a designated nature reserve, and I think there's already been a lot of research done here.
Ah, I see. Well, I'd rather do something that's new and can be useful.
I agree. That's why I identified this area further west. See, here, behind the beach.
Oh, yes, I see. That area there, where it's flat, but quite high.
Exactly. If you look a bit further inland, you'll see that there are hills which will protect that area from strong north winds.
I see. Excellent. But what's the problem?
Just that it may not be very interesting. We know that the geology there is not conducive to a wide variety of plants.
I agree. So what's your last idea?
Well, I think this one is a bit of a winner, although I did want to show you the other 2. Look up here, on the north coast.
Where?
See this bay? Well, I know that there's been quite a lot of studies done here, but a bit further to the east, behind this headland. No one has ever looked at that. Well, I certainly couldn't see any studies.
That is interesting. And the plant life could be a bit different because of the shelter from the wind the headland provides.
Exactly.
Brilliant, Jessica. That's a great idea. We'll go there.
Thanks. Now all we have to decide is when is a good time.
Well...
That is the end of part 3.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now turns to part 4.
Part 4.
You will hear a lecturer talking about dust storms. First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 36. Now listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 36.
In the last lecture, we looked at the adverse effects of desert dust on global climate. Today, we're going to examine more closely what causes dust storms and what other effects they can have. As you know, dust storms have always been a feature of desert climates, but what we want to focus on today is the extent to which human activity is causing them. And it's this trend that I want to look at, because it has wide-ranging implications. So, what are these human activities? Well, there are two main types that affect the wind erosion process, and thus the frequency of dust storms. There are activities that break up naturally wind-resistant surfaces, such as off-road vehicle use and construction. And there are those that remove protective vegetation cover from soils, for example, mainly farming and drainage. In many cases, the two effects occur simultaneously, which adds to the problem. Let's look at some real examples and see what I'm talking about. Perhaps the best-known example of agricultural impact on desert dust is the creation of the USA's Dust Bowl in the 1930s. The dramatic rise in the number of dust storms during the latter part of that decade was the result of farmers mismanaging their land. In fact, choking dust storms became so commonplace that the decade became known as the Dirty 30s. Researchers observed a similar but more prolonged increase in dustiness in West Africa between the 1960s and the 1980s, when the frequency of the storms rose to 80 a year, and the dust was so thick that visibility was reduced to 1,000 meters. This was a hazard to pilots and road users. In places like Arizona, the most dangerous dust clouds are those generated by dry thunderstorms. Here, this type of storm is so common that the problem inspired officials to develop an alert system to warn people of oncoming thunderstorms. When this dust is deposited, it causes all sorts of problems for machine operators. It can penetrate the smallest nooks and crannies and play havoc with the way things operate, because most of the dust is made up of quartz, which is very hard. Another example. The concentration of dust originating from the Sahara has risen steadily since the mid-1960s. This increase in wind erosion has coincided with a prolonged drought, which has gripped the Sahara's southern fringe. Drought is commonly associated with an increase in dust-raising activity, but it's actually caused by low rainfall, which results in vegetation dying off.
In the second part, the speaker talks about the drying up of the Aral Sea. Look at questions 37 to 40 and complete the flowchart.
One of the foremost examples of modern human-induced environmental degradation is the drying up of the Aral Sea in Central Asia. Its ecological demise dates from the 1950s, when intensive irrigation began in the then Central Asian republics of the USSR. This produced a dramatic decline in the volume of water entering the sea from its two major tributaries. In 1960, the Aral Sea was the fourth largest lake in the world, but since that time it has lost 2/3 of its volume. Its surface area has halved, and its water level has dropped by more than 216 meters. A knock-on effect of this ecological disaster has been the release of significant new sources of wind-blown material as the water level has dropped. And the problems don't stop there. The salinity of the lake has increased so that it is now virtually the same as seawater. This means that the material that is blown from the dry bed of the Aral Sea is highly saline. Scientists believe it is adversely affecting crops around the sea because salts are toxic to plants. This shows that dust storms have numerous consequences beyond their effects on climate, both for the workings of environmental systems and for people living in drylands.
That is the end of part 4.
You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Welcome to our channel. Today in this video I'll discuss with you writing task 1, and the question for today is a diagram. So the diagram below shows the various stages required to produce coffee products from coffee beans. So the diagram is showing the various steps which are required to make coffee products from the coffee beans. So first is harvesting once per year, then processing, and then drying for 24 to 72 hours. Then hulling means removing the shell of the coffee and then taking out the beans from it. Then roasting for 10 to 25 minutes, and then packaging in paper and plastic bags. Next step is delivery through trucks or vehicles, then purchase of coffee products. So let's see how we can write this now. The rendered diagram means the given diagram depicts the processing of coffee beans into various coffee products. So it is representing the processing of coffee beans into various coffee products. Overall, it is discernible from the graph that means it is clear from the graph that there are 8 steps in manufacturing, from harvesting to delivery and purchasing the product. So first step is harvesting, and then it's delivery, and then lastly people purchase the coffee products. Explicitly, the coffee beans are harvested manually once a year in the first step. After that, processing of good beans is done in a processing machine. So they will process those beans which will be of good quality. Next, the processed beans are kept under the sun for 1 to 3 days. So as we can see, first step is harvesting once per year, then processing in a machine, then drying for 24 to 72 hours means 1 to 3 days for drying purposes in the next stage. The dried beans then go through a hulling machine used to remove the covering. After that, the beans are roasted on the roaster for 10 to 20 minutes. Then roasting takes place for 10 to 20 minutes. So then after drying, hulling take place, then roasting 10 to 20 minutes, then packaging. Okay. In the subsequent stage, in the next stage, the roasted beans are packed, and for packaging, the paper and the plastic bags are used. So packaging is in 2 bags, one is in paper and the other packaging is in plastic bags are used, which are then transported through trucks and delivered to the selling points from where people can purchase the coffee product. So in the second last step is delivery, and the lastly people could purchase the coffee products. So this was for today. If you like the video, do hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. I'll meet you in the next video. Till then, bye bye and take care.